When I bought my first house, I thought the scariest thing would be the mortgage. It was a small 2-bedroom bungalow outside Milwaukee. Quiet street, fenced yard, the kind of place you picture yourself finally exhaling in. I'd been working at a law firm long enough to save a decent down payment. Fresh keys, first mortgage payment, paint swatches taped to the hallway. That feeling of adulthood where everything smells like primer and optimism. During those first weeks, I did what any organized paralegal would. Set up my utilities, changed the locks, filled out a change of address form at the post office. By the second week, the mail slot started clacking open every afternoon, dropping a few envelopes onto the floorboards. Most were the usual: welcome packets, coupons, a water bill. But there were always 2 or 3 addressed to someone else. Here, I'll call her Miss Lorraine Hensley for the sake of her privacy. I figured she was the previous tenant. I wrote return to sender and dropped them back in the box. Then more came, all handwritten, same shaky penmanship, no return address. One afternoon, I noticed something odd. The envelope wasn't sealed, just tucked. I took the bait. I slid the flap open, expecting junk or church mailers. Instead, the note inside said, "Do not let him back in." That was it. No greeting, no signature, just those 6 words. I reread it, trying to place its tone. Angry, fearful, pleading. I shrugged it off as some personal drama between Lorraine and an ex or relative. I tossed it into the shred pile at work and forgot about it. The next day, another letter came. This one said, "Jean is not allowed." That name, Jean, made it sound weirder, like an instruction, not gossip. By the end of the week, there were 5 more envelopes stacked on my kitchen counter, each with slight variations of the same warning. I decided to call the property records office during my lunch break. The clerk confirmed Lorraine had rented the place for 7 years before moving out. No forwarding address on file. I remember laughing to myself, classic Milwaukee renter mess. Probably an old landlord dispute. Still, I started keeping the mail instead of sending it back. That Friday night at 11:17 p.m., my doorbell rang. A single chime. Then silence. I was in bed, half asleep with a podcast running. My eyes flicked to the hallway where the faint porch light filtered through the glass. There were no footsteps, no car pulling away. I waited a full minute before edging to the peephole. Nothing. It didn't happen again that night, so I told myself it was a delivery mix-up or bored kids. But the following night, it rang again, around the same time. Just past 11 p.m. The next day, I mounted a doorbell cam, just in case. The next afternoon, I checked the feed while eating lunch at work. The motion alert showed a man standing inches from the lens. Ball cap low, collar turned up. He didn't knock or speak, just stared into the camera for several seconds before walking off. The microphone caught one muffled sentence as he passed under the porch light. "Did she forgive me yet?" I paused the video right there. I replayed it 3 times to be sure. He hadn't said, "Did you forgive me?" He'd said, "She forgive me." That night, I made tea, locked every door, and sat at my kitchen table trying to stay rational. Stalking cases came across my desk sometimes. I knew patterns. I told myself the man was confused about the address. Still, I slid a chair under the front knob before bed. The doorbell stayed silent for 2 nights, then came back, again, just past 11 p.m. This time, I spoke through the door. "You've got the wrong house." He answered, calm as if we were picking up a conversation mid-sentence. "She always let me in. She said I could come back if I got better." The knob turned slightly. Testing, not forcing. That sound, soft metal friction, sent my pulse jumping. I grabbed my phone and hit 911, keeping my voice calm the way I'd coached clients in restraining order cases. "I have a man outside trying my door," I told the dispatcher. He's saying something about the previous tenant. The operator asked if he was armed. I didn't see a weapon, but I couldn't bring myself to look through the peephole again. "He's moving," I whispered. Heavy steps moved across the porch, and then complete silence. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line until officers arrived. I peeked at the live door cam feed. He wasn't on the porch anymore. But a moment later, the motion alert pinged again. He had reappeared farther from the camera, standing on the sidewalk now, looking up at my bedroom windows. Police pulled up 5 minutes later. By then, he was gone. They took my statement, logged the footage, told me to call again if he returned. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, I noticed something odd while loading laundry into the basement washer. The utility closet door, behind the water heater, was slightly open. I'd never used that closet. The home inspector said it was just access piping. Inside, under an old rag, was a pillowcase. Inside that, travel-sized toiletries, a cracked flip phone, and a sticky note that read, "Back at 11 p.m. I stood there for a long time, gripping the edge of the doorframe, trying to fit the pieces together. The letters, the man, the hour. It dawned on me that whoever Gene was, he hadn't just visited Lorraine. He'd probably lived here. Maybe she kicked him out. Maybe he thought she still did. I left everything untouched, called the officers who'd come the night before, and handed it all over. The detective flipped the pillowcase inside out, frowning. Homeless squatters sometimes use basements like this. Could be old. Could be him. "Do you think he's still around?" I asked. He shrugged. "We'll keep an eye out. Change your locks again, just in case." I did. But even new locks didn't make me feel safe. Yet around 11 each night, my focus scattered. I'd check the clock compulsively, waiting. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then one Friday, while reviewing case notes in bed, the doorbell chimed again. I nearly threw the laptop off my lap. I stared at the time glowing on the screen, 11:17 p.m. Hands shaking, I opened the app. The live feed showed only the porch light. Then motion blur, someone darting just out of frame. Instead of calling 911 again, I hit the floodlight switch from the app. The yard exploded in white. For a split second, I saw him, just the back of his jacket as he sprinted toward the street, hat flying off mid-run. He never came back after that. A few days later, an officer called to update me. The phone from the pillowcase had been dead for years. No SIM card. They'd found nothing in the Prince database. "Probably an old squatter," he said. "You just moved into his comfort zone." It wasn't his house anymore, but it had been. The idea that a place could still belong to someone in their mind unsettled me more than any ghost story could. That week, I moved my bed away from the front windows, installed a doorstop alarm, set my phone alarm for 11 p.m. each night as a sort of countdown reminder. Check locks, camera, curtains. I never skipped it. It's been 3 years since all that. I still live here, but the house never really feels quiet. Silence has weight. Sometimes the mail slot clacks open with junk flyers, and for a second I brace myself to see that handwriting again. It's never shown up, but I still forward any stray letters straight to the precinct just in case. Because the truth is, safety isn't just about who you lock out. It's about who still believes they belong inside. I bought the place for its bones, not its beauty. 3-bedroom ranch, 1970s build, solid slab, ugly tile, and cabinets that had seen more reheats than renovations. My wife joked that demolition day would be my new hobby. She wasn't wrong. That first Saturday off duty, I pulled on knee pads and earmuffs and went at it like it was a training drill. Vacuum for dust, tape for evidence. I labeled every screw baggie and marked every stud location. Years on the force had made me meticulous to a fault. I couldn't even remodel without turning it into a scene log. By noon, I had the lower cabinets off and the kitchen looked gutted but promising. I knelt to remove a base kick plate when something clinked behind it. I figured a drop screw, but when I pried it off, I saw a strip of duct tape. Underneath it, stuck in a thin layer of grease and sawdust, was a small brass key. It was darkened from age, but had a neat tag loop. Blank, no label, no engraving. People hide all kinds of things: cash, spare keys, bad habits, but a single unlabeled key taped under a cabinet? That's not normal. That night, I left it on the counter, meaning to toss it in the junk drawer. But I kept looking at it over dinner, the way you do with something that doesn't quite sit right. My wife noticed. "Another mystery solved detective?" she teased. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe I just found someone else's secret." The next morning, I knew I wasn't letting it go. The backyard stretched into a patch of overgrown cane and weeds. It was hard to say where the yard ended. The thick weeds made it feel endless. I'd walked it once before closing, but hadn't paid attention beyond the chain link on one side. When I reached the far corner, I saw something I hadn't registered before. A rusted tin shed almost buried in cane. No lock on the door, just a padlock looped through the latch. Rusted stiff with years of disuse. I pulled out the key. It fit like it had been waiting. The lock popped open. Inside, my flashlight beam caught dust swirling and, oddly, a smell of plastic. The shed wasn't empty. 3 Rubbermaid totes sat in a row. The first one I opened held children's shoes, not pairs, singles. Each one was different. A pink sandal, a mudcake sneaker, a small boot with a glitter star peeling off. All sizes, none matched. The second tote had photos, dozens of them. Interiors of houses, not mine. Kitchens, basements, hallways. A few had stuffed animals visible. Others had notes scribbled on the back. Closet door, same layout, move mirror. The third tote stopped me cold. A duffel bag full of laminated name badges, hospital IDs. Same hospital, different names. But every single one had the same face printed on them. I zipped the duffel shut and backed out. My training said secure the scene, but I wasn't on duty. I took photos with my phone. Then I locked the padlock again, snapped a photo of that too, and called one of my buddies from patrol. He met me half an hour later. We popped the lock again together, went through it slow, this time recording video. When I lifted the duffel, something new slid out. A single ID badge lay on top of the pile. Clean, laminated, fresh. No photo, no printed name. Just my street name scrawled in Sharpie across the top line. I hadn't seen it before. I'm damn sure of that. We stepped out fast. My partner looked at me like I'd brought him to a prank scene. "You sure you didn't plant this yourself to get me out of paperwork?" I didn't answer. We locked it back up, called it in. The detectives took over within the hour. They logged everything, asked the standard, "Did you know the previous owner? Any contact since the sale? Any suspicious vehicles around?" I had nothing. That night, my wife tried to lighten the mood, said probably some squatter's stash. Could be nothing. Maybe. I installed a floodlight on the shed and a trail cam by morning. Habit. Control what you can see. A week later, detectives called. The hospital IDs were confirmed counterfeit, printed on an old blank batch the hospital reported missing years earlier. None of the photos matched open cases. No fingerprints worth processing. Dead end. They closed it as miscellaneous recovered property. A month after the find, I went to the shed again. The lock hung twisted, freshly cut. Inside, the floor was swept clean. Cleaner than before. Like someone wanted to erase the whole thing. I welded the door shut that same day. Called my patrol friend to stand by while I did it. He didn't say a word, just kept the flashlight steady as I sealed the seams. That night, we sat on the porch, drinking coffee, neither of us wanting beer. "You think whoever it was came back for the stuff?" he asked. "I think whoever it was never left," I said. He looked out toward the dark field. "You should move." Maybe I should have, but something about the place felt like unfinished business. I upgraded the lights, installed perimeter alarms, even mounted another trail cam higher up. The footage stayed clear for weeks. After that, I stopped checking. My wife eventually convinced me to fill the backyard with gravel and planters, make it look new. We planted oleander along the fence. She said the flowers would hide the scars where the shed sat. They didn't. I still catch myself staring toward that corner when the wind moves the cane. It's been years now. We've repainted, remodeled, made the place livable, but that part of the yard still feels like an open file. But I'll never forget the day I found out that my house once had a second life before me. And some nights, I get the feeling that life isn't finished. When I bought my little blue house, I told myself it would finally be the calm kind of quiet I'd been craving. The place wasn't fancy, paint chipped in spots, fence leaning, but it felt safe. My first home. My first real space that was mine. That first week was all cinnamon tea, new routines, and lesson plans tacked to the hallway corkboard. I even named the backyard squirrel Principal Nut. It was silly, but it made the silence friendlier. The back door was my favorite spot. White wood, new deadbolt, view of the alley. Every night before bed, I'd whisper my checklist like a mantra. Windows locked, stove off, door latched. I even stuck a neon pink note beside the light switch that said, "Lock." The first time I found the door unlocked, I laughed it off. I'd been lesson planning late, probably distracted. I locked it again and pressed the sticky note down harder. The second morning, it happened again. This time, I stood staring at the knob like it was mocking me. I remembered locking it, double-checking even. I told myself maybe the latch hadn't seated right. Still, my gut wouldn't settle. I ordered one of those keyless smart deadbolts that track every click and chirp. That night, I set it, heard the motor whir, and felt reassured by the little green light. The next morning, the app log showed unlocked 2:43 a.m., manual turn. I hadn't touched it. My teacher brain tried logic. Software glitch, power blip, calibration error. But my gut whispered something older and simpler. Someone had turned it. I decided to test it, science experiment style. I balanced a dime on the inside handle so it would ping if moved, and dusted a thin trail of flour on the tile by the threshold. Just before bed, I whispered, "Let's see what's real." At 3:12 a.m., a dog barked in the alley. Then, the dime hit the tile. I didn't move. My throat went dry, listening to the silence stretch out again. When dawn came, the flour showed a single wide tread. Flat, smooth like a skate shoe, and a gray smear near the jamb, as if from ash or graphite. The pencil line I'd drawn to mark the latch position was smudged. Someone had tested the lock. I cleaned up, snapped a photo, and told no one. Not yet. That night, I camped in the living room with the lights off, phone recording, thumb hovering over the panic siren icon in the app. Around 2:58 a.m., the microphone picked up a wet breath close to the door. The handle nudged, barely. Then came a slow scrape, like a card sliding into a latch. I hit the siren. The lock screamed an electronic wail. Through the curtains, a shadow jolted and vanished. I dialed 911. 2 officers arrived within minutes. They found nothing disturbed except the flour trail, smudged again, and the dime rolled to a corner. They searched the porch and bagged a lipstick-stained cigarette butt, a lone bobby pin, and a discarded hotel keycard in the alley gravel. Could be trash, one said. The other promised extra patrols. I nodded too many times, pretending their calm could be borrowed. After they left, I stared at the door until sunrise. Someone hadn't just tested it, they'd practiced. The next day, I fortified like I was prepping for finals. Latch guards, floodlights, a doorbell cam. I slept in the front room for a week and tried not to imagine wide treads pacing outside. Each night, I repeated the steps: lock, bar, check app, breathe. 2 nights later, the app flashed tamper alert 1:19 a.m. No footage, just the moth-blurred porch light. My pulse kicked anyway. The neighbor across the alley, runner, paint-spattered leggings, flagged me down the next morning. My dog went nuts around 3, she said. Thought I heard a car door but didn't see one. You good? I told her the short version. She frowned. Bang on the fence. If it happens again, I'll flip my porch light. A new layer of security, human this time. I wanted the feeling of control back, so I started teaching again like normal, pretending I wasn't afraid to leave the house empty. But that night, curiosity pushed me into the basement, where the old utility closet door hung slightly open. Inside was the water heater, some paint cans, and a scuff mark near the bottom. Fresh, knee level, like someone had eased it shut with a leg. I shut it hard and told myself it had been wind. The basement didn't have a window big enough for wind. Sunday evening, I reset the dime trap, added 2 coins balanced on a chair by the knob, and dusted flour again. The rituals helped, same as grading papers, order and chaos. I told myself maybe the person had moved on, maybe it was all done. At 2:51 a.m., glass tapped the wall. The chair had moved. I grabbed my phone and hit the doorbell cam's 2-way mic. This is being recorded, I said in my teacher voice. Police have been called. Footsteps fading down the alley. The same officers came again. They told me gently that most break-ins are crimes of opportunity, nothing personal. I thanked them anyway because they'd stayed until the dawn light hit the fence. For 3 nights, nothing happened. The log stayed clean. I started to believe I could exhale again. Then, Wednesday morning, I noticed a dusty footprint by the back mat, same tread, same size, and a faint pink fleck on the siding, like chipped nail polish. I called the detective line, left a detailed voicemail, and waited. I knew what the answer would be. No leads. That evening, while making tea, I thought I heard movement below. Just the faint settling groan of the basement. Maybe. I stood at the top of the stairs and said aloud, "You are not allowed in here." It sounded absurd. It also steadied me. By the weekend, I was half convinced I'd scared them off. I even started leaving the kitchen light off at night, testing my courage. The next few days blurred together. No new tamper alerts, no footprints. I started sleeping with earplugs just so my body could remember what rest felt like. But even now, months later, I can't walk past that door without touching the lock twice. The sticky note by the switch, lock, is curling at the edges, but I won't replace it. It's proof that I learned something. I kept the dime on the counter beside the kettle, a reminder that paranoia can save you, and that sometimes fear earns its place, because doors don't unlock themselves. Someone always turns the handle, and I know it might sound stubborn, but I had to let whatever was there know this was my place now, and I wasn't backing down. When I bought the place, I didn't care much about charm. I cared about the garage. I'm a mechanic. Give me concrete floors, a pegboard wall, and enough outlets to run a compressor without tripping the house, and I'm set. The realtor kept talking about character, and curb appeal. I was thinking about whether my toolbox would fit between the workbench and the breaker panel. The house was a 2-story from the 50s, a little worn but solid. The roof didn't leak, the basement didn't smell like mold, and the price was right. Perfect for a guy who spends more time under cars than watching TV. The first few weeks were just fixing things. I replaced every cracked outlet, cleaned up the wiring, and mapped every breaker. It's how I get to know a house, by rebuilding it. I made a neat tool wall in the garage, tuned my old radio to the classic rock station, and hung a new LED shop light over the bench. Everything worked the way it should. Until the upstairs light started doing its own thing. The first time it happened, I didn't even think twice. It was maybe a week after I moved in. I'd gone out to the garage for a wrench and noticed the light in the front bedroom was on. I figured I must have bumped the switch earlier while carrying boxes. I went up, flicked it off, and called it a day. A few nights later, around 2 a.m, I got up for water and saw it again. Same light, same room, glowing like someone was up there reading. The weird part was, I hadn't gone near that room since the first night. I checked everything. Breaker panel, fine. Bulb, new. Switch, solid. I replaced it anyway. Out of habit, more than worry. I even tested for ghost voltage with my multimeter. Nothing. It should have ended there. But it didn't. 3 nights later, the light clicked on again. This time, I was awake to hear it. It was a small sound. Click. Like a finger tapping the switch. I stood in the hall, listening. The house creaked, but that one sound didn't belong. I went up expecting to find something obvious. A short, maybe. But the switch felt normal, firm. That's when I noticed the paint around it, just below the toggle, had a thin groove like something narrow had been rubbed against it over and over. The door to that room didn't close tight unless you pulled it hard. I grabbed a zip tie from my pocket, slipped it through the gap, and pushed down. The switch flipped, clean as if someone had done it 1,000 times. Next day, I picked up one of those cheap cube cameras. Used to use them at the shop to film undercarriages. I set it up on a tripod at the top of the stairs facing that bedroom door. The plan was simple. If the light came on, I'd have proof. That night, around 2:40, I woke up again. Sure enough, the light was on. But before going upstairs, I stepped outside to look from the driveway just to make sure I wasn't seeing reflections. And there it was, clear as day in the window. A shape. Not detailed, just a faint silhouette like a shoulder and the curve of a head. It paused for half a second and then darkness. I ran inside, up the stairs, through the hall. The air in that room felt still, heavy. Closet empty, window locked. No footprints, no draft, nothing. The next morning, I checked the footage. At 2:41 a.m., the light switched on. No one visible. Just that clean flick upward. A second later, it twitched like someone tried to turn it off again, but stopped halfway. The motion was partially blocked by something gray. A sleeve, maybe. But it was too quick and too close to the lens to tell. I replayed it over and over, hoping it was a compression glitch or my own reflection. But the angle didn't make sense. I could see the edge of the door. No reflection there. I started to feel like I was living with a house that didn't agree with me. Later that week, I went next door to meet the old lady who'd lived there for decades. She told me the man before me, Mr. Dugan, used to walk the rooms at night. Said it was just a habit. He'd check every window, every burner, then do it all again before sunrise. He liked to know the house was sleeping safely, she said. Then she added, smiling, maybe he's still doing his rounds. That was supposed to be comforting. It wasn't. The light came on again the very next night. This time I was awake for it. I heard the click. I waited 5 full minutes before moving, then went up slowly. The bulb hummed faintly. Nothing else. No air from the vent, no noise from outside, just the feeling that someone had just left the room seconds before I walked in. I started sleeping downstairs on the couch. It wasn't fear, at least that's what I told myself. It was just strategy. 2 weeks passed with nothing. Then one night, while I was out for a late beer with a friend, the alarm company left a note on my door saying there'd been a short power outage at 2:44 a.m. That caught my eye. When I checked the camera footage later, there it was again, the light turned on for exactly 1 minute. No shadow this time, no silhouette, just a flicker in the air, a shimmer, like heat above a hood, and then black. I called the alarm company. They said the system was fine, maybe a surge from the old wiring, but the panel I'd installed was grounded perfectly. It wasn't the wiring. I would have bet my paycheck on that. One day, I went up into the attic. The place smelled like old paper and dust. I found nothing. No footprints, no crawl paths, no nests, just insulation and cobwebs. Still, I marked every beam with chalk, so if something moved up there, I'd know. Nothing ever did. The light didn't turn on again for almost a month. Then, at 2:37 a.m., it did. The upstairs cam caught it this time. A single flick. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, something moved past the lens. A blur of fabric, gray with a seam like a sleeve. I'd told myself for weeks that this wasn't about ghosts or superstition. But seeing that real, physical movement made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt since I was a rookie firefighter walking into my first dark building. I grabbed my flashlight and went upstairs. Every room was still. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was a wiring problem. I installed motion sensors in every room, window pins, and extra cameras. I turned the house into a trap, the kind you build when logic has stopped keeping you safe. Weeks went by. No lights, no noise. I started to relax again. That's when I realized whoever had been messing with the light wasn't trying to spook me. They were checking something, keeping a routine, just like Mr. Dugan. Since then, it's been random. Sometimes weeks go by without incident. Other times, the light comes on, stays for a minute, and goes dark again. Once, while I was out of town, the camera caught it turning on and off twice in a row, like someone checking each room by habit. I keep every video file. I don't know why. Maybe because deleting them would mean pretending it isn't happening. A couple of neighbors have joked that Mr. Dugan just isn't done checking in. I don't correct them anymore. It's easier to let them think it's a story than to explain how I've heard the faint squeak of that upstairs switch 36 times without ever finding a cause. I don't talk about it much. Maybe that's what it wanted. Continuity. Routine. I still live here. The alarm company knows me by first name. I've stopped trying to fix the light. Now, when it comes on, I just wait a minute and turn it back off. I treat it like another job on the to-do list, tightening a bolt no one else sees. It's not fear anymore. It's coexistence. Like the house and I came to an agreement. I keep its habits alive, and it lets me sleep. And maybe that's the truth about old homes. They don't always need fixing. They just need someone to keep the lights in check. Even the ones that turn on by themselves. The house wasn't much, just a stucco box on Tucson's edge. Citrus trees in the yard, a garage for my bike, and that hum from the swamp cooler that reminded me of summers growing up. I didn't need fancy, just a place that felt like mine. The first evening, I was untangling the hose when the guy next door leaned over the cinder block wall. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said. "I'm Ron." Friendly enough. Baseball cap, mirrored sunglasses even after sunset. He talked about trash pickup, flooding in monsoon season, all the usual small talk. Then he added almost casually, "If you ever need anything, I've got a spare key for emergencies. The last folks gave me one." I laughed politely, figuring he meant it as a neighborly offer, but the phrasing stuck with me. The last folks gave me one. Not used to. Gave. Over the next few days, I settled in. Cleaned the carport, rehung a door, learned which drawer stuck. Most nights, I'd sit on the porch with a beer while the swamp cooler buzzed, watching the dog chase lizards in the yard. Ron was always around, sweeping a spotless driveway, watering plants that didn't need it, sitting in a lawn chair facing my place. At first, it felt friendly. Then it started to feel like observation. He'd make offhand comments that sounded like jokes, until I thought about them later. "That back room gets hot in the afternoons. Bad insulation," he said one day. "You like salsa verde, huh? Good choice." I laughed, but my hand tightened on the grocery bag he was referencing. Maybe he saw the jar through the plastic. Maybe he guessed. Still, he always seemed to know too much. When I asked how long he'd lived there, he said, "Long enough to know this house," nodding toward mine. "The last people were good to me." That line sat wrong in my stomach. A few weeks later, I took an extra shift, 10 hours of deliveries across town. When I got home, my AC was set lower than I ever left it, a spoon was in the sink, and my dog was sleeping on a striped blanket I didn't own. I froze in the doorway, staring. The blanket looked just like the one Ron kept on his patio chair. I checked the back door. Locked. The dog wagged his tail, calm. No sign of stress. Whoever came in wasn't a stranger to him. I went straight to the security camera I'd mounted by the gate. The timestamp read 1:12 p.m., and for a split second, a baseball cap brushed the edge of the frame. That was enough. I walked next door. Ron answered fast, grinning like always. "Hey buddy, what's up?" I showed him the still frame on my phone. "You been in my house?" "Oh, that? Nah. Probably came up to check your fence. It's leaning near the citrus." "You still have that key?" I asked. He made a show of thinking, then went to a drawer, jangling metal. "Here you go," he said finally, holding out a single brass key. Forgot I still had it. I took it, but didn't leave right away. "That the only one?" "Far as I know," he said, still smiling, but the corners of his mouth didn't move. "Don't worry, man, I'm not going to rob you." I didn't call the police right away. I called a locksmith. Every door, every latch, every lock, replaced. By the time the sun went down, I had a new set of keys and a sore throat from holding my temper. That night, Ron was outside watering his gravel, just pouring water onto rocks. When he noticed me, he waved. "Hot one, huh?" "Yeah," I said, and went inside. 2 days later, I found a small bag on my doorstep. Salsa Verde. The same brand I'd bought the week before. No note. I left it sitting there until the sun turned the bag brittle. I finally called non-emergency dispatch and told them everything. The young officer who came by listened carefully, nodding. "If he entered without permission, that's criminal trespass," she said. "But it'll be hard to prove unless you've got footage of him crossing the threshold." That Monday, Ron's house had a "for sale" sign in the yard. One of those cheap handwritten ones you buy at the hardware store. He didn't mention it, didn't wave, just vanished into his garage most of the day. It should have felt like a relief, but it didn't. Every time I looked at that blank for sale sign, I thought about how fast it went up after I changed the locks. Like maybe the game wasn't fun anymore if he couldn't get in. I just waited. That evening, I stood in my driveway pretending to tinker with the hood of my car. His blinds were drawn. Through a gap, I saw him moving, packing boxes. By the end of the week, the for sale sign was gone. So was he. 2 new buyers toured the house the next month. A young couple, smiling, already imagining their future there. "How's the neighborhood?" the guy asked. "Quiet," I said. "You'll want to rekey the locks." He laughed, not catching the tone. "Always do." When they moved in, I made a point of waving once, then minding my own business. They seemed nice. Normal. I hoped they'd stay that way. The dog sometimes perks up in the afternoons, looking toward the back door, listening. Maybe he's hearing something I can't. Or maybe he's remembering a pattern that used to mean company. Either way, I check the cameras every time. Nothing so far. I've learned a few things since that first night I met Ron. Always rekey when you move in. Never assume neighborly means harmless. And if someone offers you a favor that gives them access to your life, smile, say thanks, and change the locks anyway. Sometimes the scariest part isn't who's watching you. It's realizing they've been inside the whole time. If you also thought moving into a new house meant finally getting some peace and quiet, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me which story hit you hardest: letters, locks, or neighbors. And if you think danger only lurks inside your home, wait until you're miles from the nearest light. Click now to watch 4 disturbing middle-of-nowhere horror stories, because safety's just a story we tell ourselves. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.